Immersed Robot.
Hello everyone, welcome to Immersed Robot. So in this video I'm just going to take a very quick look at performance of Dirt Rally 2.0 in the Pimax 8KX. And this is just a very quick look because I'm not really a sim racer, but I thought it would be interesting for some fans of this game. It's a very popular game in VR, and of course sim racing and the Pimax 8KX do seem to go sort of hand in hand really, so it will be interesting for people to see just how well this game performs in VR. Now I'm going to look at a few different in-game settings, but I am running SteamVR resolution scaling at 60%, which still gives a very high resolution of 3520 by 3060, and of course you know you can ramp that up or down accordingly depending on what system you've got. I have got all of my own system specs in the description to this video, but it's a Ryzen 5 5600X CPU and a RTX 3080 GPU, just for your reference. And as I mentioned, I'll be going through a few different in-game settings on this. But starting out, I used the in-game preset of low just to get a baseline on how this was performing. And as you can see from the FPS VR overlay at the bottom of the screen there, that I am running the Pimax 8KX at 90Hz, so it's running pretty nicely at those 90 frames per second native on the settings, and the GPU frame timings are well under 11 milliseconds, generally around the sort of the 9 millisecond mark or lower really. They do sort of pop up every now and again, but they're not too high at all, so it can handle it on these settings really well. Now, of course, some people will look at that 60% resolution scaling in SteamVR and say that's not really high enough, but if you look at the actual resolution that is being displayed in the headset there, it is over 3000 pixels high, so it's still a very high resolution and it looks good enough to me. Now, generally what I do is I've sort of settled on 60% resolution scaling in SteamVR, and then I balance things out with in-game settings, which some games will have a resolution scaling option in them as well, so I can sometimes ramp that up a little bit if I have some performance headroom. Otherwise I just sort of stick to that, because generally I do find that actually gives a pretty acceptable image quality and level of resolution in most games. So of course you can take the results I'm showing here with a pinch of salt if you want to ramp up that SteamVR resolution scaling, but I'm just saying from my point of view it looked pretty clear to me. So next I changed the settings to the medium graphical preset in game, and immediately we could see that I was running at 45 FPS there, so it was locked in reprojection. I am using the smart smoothing feature in Pytools there, so it will lock it at 45 FPS if it is sort of running generally above those 11 milliseconds GPU frame timings, and this is, so straight away we could see that medium settings you are going to run this at 45 FPS really, which is fine for some people. I know some people don't mind that. Personally I do like to stick to those native 90 frames per second if possible, and this was still a good experience though. Overall it was consistently smooth at those 45 FPS, so people can certainly play it on these and have a pretty good experience overall. So then moving up once again to high settings, you can see once again we're in reprojection, no surprises there really, and the GPU frame timing has risen up to around 15 milliseconds here on these settings. So medium and high you are going to be running in reprojection unless you drastically lower resolution scaling in SteamVR, but overall once again, you know, if your preference is to have a higher graphical quality in game at the cost of running at native frame rates, then this is definitely an option as well. I didn't go above high settings, I decided to stick to that because the ultra settings of course would push things even further. Didn't seem worthwhile in this just very quick look at Dirt Rally 2 in the Pimax 8KX. However, I did decide to change a few of the medium settings to see if I could get it running more or less on 90 frames per second native on general medium settings, but then by lowering a few things down. So I did manage to achieve that by turning off anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering, but then I did raise up the texture quality, but then lowered things like shadows and a few other things in the game settings. Unfortunately, you can't see exactly what I changed here because the captured footage is just a little bit too pixelated based on how the Pimax it captures the mirror image of the VR headset. So you can't see it too much, but I just sort of changed a few things, went back out until things were running at 90 FPS. So it was just a bit of compromise really. You can, if you by tweaking settings in the medium in-game preset, you can get it running at 90 FPS, but it might not be worth worth the difference in going from the preset of low up to the preset of medium and adjusting settings. You might not notice too much of a difference with that. So overall for me, I was pretty pleased with the way it performed and looked on the low graphical preset, and as I mentioned, I think I would probably use that as the baseline and then perhaps tweak a few settings just to get those textures a little bit better and get some of the environmental quality up slightly, while also balancing things out to run at those native 90 FPS. It's just a preference that I personally have. You might feel differently, but I hope this is giving you some idea of the kinds of performance you can get out of the Pimax 8KX with this game and with a RTX 3080. Of course, you need to keep that in mind and scale things up or down depending on what GPU you have as well. But I hope this gives you some kind of idea what performance you can expect. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.